after the first one lapsed, I was like, I need a break. I can't, emotionally, mentally, physically, I can't keep doing this. And it was a very tough call at the time.
Welcome to episode 64 of the CPA Exam Experience podcast from SuperfastCPA. I'm Nate, and in today's interview, you're going to hear a conversation I had with Cody. Cody's one of our customers, and he has really two segments or two distinct parts to his CPA exam journey. The first part, several years ago, he had the proverbial worst case scenario happen where he had several exams passed and then eventually lapse. And he kind of swore off the exams. And then now, a few years later, he's come back to it. So the point of this interview is hearing the changes he's made to his process, what he realized now looking back that wasn't working, or why the process was so burdensome and took so much time, the first time around, the changes he's made to make the study process much more manageable, and he still has time to, fit in his hobbies, the things that he actually likes doing, so that this doesn't become just such a burdensome process. And it can be done even though he's working full time. He's got people he wants to hang out with. He's got things he likes doing besides studying, of course, and how he's making that all work. And so it's a much different story the second time around. And so that is what you will hear on the interview with Cody. So before we get into the interview, I just want to mention two things. First of all, if you find these episodes helpful, whether you're watching these on YouTube or you're listening to the audio version on a podcast platform, please take a second to share it with somebody that you know who's also working on their CPA exams, because these are the best free resource available for people trying to figure out this process. Everything comes down to your daily study process. And these episodes where you get to hear all these experiences from people that, some people really struggled. Some people just kind of started with our study strategies, and so they just hit the ground running. But regardless, these episodes, we talk through everyone's strategies, and people do things differently, obviously, but then there are also very common themes that when someone figures out their study process, they're doing the same kind of key things, or the key ingredients are in place. So going on from that, if you have not taken the time yet, or this is the first episode you've come across, then the best place for you to start learning about our study framework and why our clients and customers get such good results and can actually maintain a work-study life balance and still have time to do the things they like doing while crushing their exams at the same time, the best place to start is with one of our free study training webinars. That's where we'll walk you through the key kind of study framework, how to use your review course much more efficiently and effectively, spend less time sitting in front of it each day while getting better results. So you can click the button, or there should be a link in the description if you're watching this on YouTube, or you can just go to our homepage at SuperfastCPA.com. It's the main thing at the top of the homepage. You can click on, see the upcoming times, and register for one of those sessions. So all that being said, let's get into this interview with Cody. Yeah, I looked at so you're halfway done, correct?
Halfway done. Yeah. So
I've
passed FAR, and I passed audit.
Nice.
And then I sit for BEC in October, middle to end of October, and then I'll schedule reg for December timeframe.
Cool.
Hoping to be done by the end of the year.
Yeah, well, you're on track. And where are you at with how long have you been studying total? How long have you been out of school? Or are you just what's your whole?
Yeah. So I graduated in 2015, and straight away started studying for the CPA. I was on the consulting side of Big Four, so worked for EY for many years, and did accounting, computer science undergrad. So I was wanted to get my CPA, but it wasn't a requirement, so that threw some wrenches into things. But yeah, I started studying right out of college. Ended up passing BEC, reg, and audit, and then I had FAR left. I got a 74 3 times, I think you've heard
Oh
this story
man.
before. And
Yeah.
and then everything lapsed, and it was just like heartbreaking, but I was truly like, forget this, I don't need it.
Yeah.
Just yeah, really frustrated and like yeah, wrecked by it overall. And so then I restarted studying about this January last year, and I sat for FAR in like June or no May timeframe, and then yeah, I've been rolling ever since.
Sorry. So when you came back to it just now, did you pass that first? You came back to FAR and you
Yeah,
passed that?
yeah. So I'm 2 for 2 in this new
Oh,
this
okay.
new wave of testing. Yeah.
Okay.
So I and the question has been asked, but like I Superfast CPA like was I think that big difference maker for me, and I we can get into how I was studying and what didn't work. I mean, honestly, I'm probably I've listened to a number of these episodes, a lot of them, in fact, but I'm a pretty generic test case, right? Like I
Yeah.
went Becker straight through. I checked all the boxes. I made sure it said complete, and then I moved on. And then I come back at the end and realize I have no idea what I'm doing, and take the test and fail the test, and it was
Yeah.
rinse and repeat. So
Well, yeah. So before we get into that, the question I had, so you have several years after you passed three and then they all lapsed. What brought you back to the CPA career wise? I mean, I guess just whatever the reason was, what brought you back to wanting to do it?
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just resiliency, ambition, trying to make sure that I'm doing the most now that to pay dividends in my career going forward. But more
Yeah.
than anything, it was for me, like this was something that it broke me like back years ago. So I was like really, tormented of if this was the right thing. I had a couple mentors tell me that it was a sizable gap on my resume going to
Mm,
EY, going to Big Four, and not having a CPA to show for it was a sizable gap. And so all those factors combined is really what caused me to want to pursue it again. And so, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. That's kind of I mean, that was a big thing for me was I viewed the CPA as like, if you go into accounting, you've essentially done, I mean, essentially the whole reason you did your undergrad and then a master's or the equivalent was just for
Mhm.
the opportunity to even take these exams. And so, yeah, it was like, okay, I'm passing these exams. Like, I'm not going to not do this because I came this far just to take these. So, yeah,
Totally.
you probably just summarized it. When you passed the first three, you were just doing the traditional study approach and spending a ton of time. And I mean, you passed three that way. And
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. So, sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah, I think
No,
we
I
have
was just
like a
going to say,
1 second
so
delay, and so like I'll end up saying something. Yeah, that. Anyways, go ahead. Whatever you're
no
gonna say.
worries. Yeah. So I did end up passing three ineffectively is what I would say, like, or inefficiently is what I would say. Far though, that's where like the real understanding comes out, I think, though, because it's
Mm-hmm.
such a major test. It's such a huge amount of content that you can't like you have to go back and re-review constantly. If you don't, you're gonna forget. And honestly, like I wasn't great with my journal entries. I wasn't great with my T accounts, and so it was a lot of fundamental immaturity maybe in my knowledge of the content that led me to fail. And so as I would go through it, of course I was doing everything that Becker was telling me to do, but it was just going in one ear out the other, and I didn't have the maybe awareness to say like I'm not retaining this information well enough to be
Yeah.
able to translate it on the exam, because you can do each of the modules, you can do each of the sections and think you're getting it. And then when they put it a little bit different in the question, all of a
Right.
sudden you don't know the concept at all. And you then panic, and then everything goes downhill from there. So,
Yeah. No, that is a huge thing, and obviously, you've probably heard me talk about this endlessly if you've listened to a bunch of the podcasts, but there's just kind of the way that review courses present the information, or basically it's the assumption is kind of your only tool in this process is time spent studying. Just like watch the video again, do more questions. And it's never really taught to people to like, you also need to be strategically assessing your own process with basically what you just kind of mentioned there, the kind of the difference. So you get the 374s, and I'm assuming your mindset at that point was just like, I've spent all the time I can spend. I guess I just can't pass this, or is that basically what happened at that point?
Yeah, basically. It was, of course I sent it to the local accounting board, and I said, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like, had them relook at it, or I rebutted or whatever.
Yeah.
But I sent it to them twice, and both times they came back with, sorry, but it's still a 74. And
oh man,
absolutely brutal. And so, yeah. And so after that, first one lapse, first one was reg, and then it was BEC, and then it was audit. And I was just like, after the first one lapse, I was like, I need a break. I can't, emotionally, mentally, physically, I can't keep doing this. And it was a very tough call at the time, and something that, I've regretted since. And so that's obviously why I came back to do it. But yeah, 74s, man, those are the real, those ones kill you the most. And getting it 3 times was like, the kill shot.
How long did you restudy between those 3? I guess the 2, so the first one and then between the other 2 retakes.
Yeah, it's a good question. I did 2 back-to-back, so it was probably a month and a half, I would say, between the first and the second attempt. It was go through the material at a high level, looking at my notes instead of like reading the chapters, not listening to the lectures anymore, because I felt like I knew the material, running, practice questions, a lot of task-based simulations, which is a huge piece of what I've cut down on as part of my new study strategy. But so that's the general timeline.
Now, did you say one of these 2 that you've passed now is FAR?
Yeah. So that was the first one that I took. I wanted to make sure that was fully out before my time started. So I took FAR and got an 87, and couldn't have been more excited for that. So
sweet. Yeah. I think you've got it handled at this point. So that's awesome. So when you came back now this time, at what point did you come across I'm assuming you watched our free training initially. That's like where everyone starts.
Yeah. So it was actually, I got relatively lucky. It was at the beginning. I had probably gone through maybe 2 of the subsections in FAR. So 2 of the 10 or whatever. And then I came across Superfast by, I think it was just podcasts. I was looking up CPA podcasts, just trying to get inspired. And then I found your podcast, listened to a couple episodes, was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. Clearly I'm doing this inefficiently. And so then I did the free class, and then it was from there. I just purchased it.
Nice.
So, it was definitely, but I like clearly didn't learn from the first time, because I started doing like literally end to end just again, and it was taking hours that I didn't have. And so then I was like, this has to change. So,
yeah. So, what would you say was like the biggest difference, or maybe like the top 2 or 3 things that, I don't know, I think you mentioned, so you've gone in and watched the pro videos then, right?
I have.
Yeah. There's the free training, and then like the pro videos, the actual course is just a lot more in depth. So what were the main 2 or 3 aha moments or big changes you made in how you study now?
Yeah. So, I mean, biggest one is definitely taking the doing the questions first. Like that is very, very helpful. And I still watch most of the lectures.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I can adjust how I'm learning from those lectures. And so I haven't cut it out the lectures in totality, but just because I've given myself enough uh, runway to have that time, so I'm not time bound. I don't have to get it done in 3 weeks. Otherwise, you couldn't really watch the lectures. So that's one is the questions. The two is maybe the notes or you talk a lot about the flashcards. Flashcards aren't really my preferred
Yeah.
method. I have an Excel workbook that I use as my like final review. And so anything that strikes me, anything that I struggle with, any kind of formulas that I need to be able to retain, I write them down in this workbook and then I review that each of the modules after each of like that's part of my I'm sorry, what part of my like study routine. So I
Mm-hmm.
do a section of questions plus the videos if I have time. I do a 30 question test or mini test, and then I review my subsection for the week or for the day. Sorry, but I just said another one right there that is key, and that is doing that 30 question refresher
Yeah.
of all of the material. Right, that's
Yeah.
you as well. So really, it's the questions, how I'm addressing the multiple choice questions, and that has been night and day difference on the tests. I find myself finishing the multiple choice parts of the exam in very, very quickly in definitely under 2 hours, probably more like an hour and a half. And that's allows me, to have significant amount of time on the test-based simulations, which are more difficult for me to like apply the knowledge. And so having that longer runway has given me a lot more, if nothing else, more confidence going into those the test-based simulation sections to be able to say like, you're good, just breathe, no worries. If you need to go get water, take water. You're not time bound. You're not crunched for anything. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the, that's like the number one test day strategy for sims, like regardless of how you actually approach the sims, is just leaving 2 hours plus, because they're going to be there will at least be a few that are confusing, that are different than anything you've seen in your review course. And so really your only weapon against that is tons of time, so that you're not stressed out, you're not trying to rush through it, and doing all the MCQs in your daily process. So again, you've probably heard me say this on other episodes, but just the whole approach just kind of solves all these problems in advance. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
Getting really fast at the MCQs, because on test day there's just all kinds of advantages. If the MCQs are like easy and you breeze through them, that's half the test. And then the hardest part about the sims is the time constraints, trying to figure all that out, map out the little documents or whatever. Anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
And then the other thing you said was, you said you have an Excel workbook instead of flashcards. And that is,
Yeah.
the flashcards is more just like a medium. Really, the important thing is that you're taking, just like you said, concepts, whatever it is that you personally struggle to either understand or you keep forgetting it for some reason, and you put those in your own words somewhere that you can review later. That's just that's a huge piece versus just using the flashcards that came with your review course over and over. Those are written by an accountant.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to look at those and be like, oh yeah, I get this. But all you're doing is memorizing like flashcards written by somebody else. You're not taking the concepts and forcing yourself to actually understand it. So yeah.
And the last piece that is like night and day difference, I think for me, is that are the little mini quizzes, the 5-question quizzes. Like, even though I run into, having seen the same question many times, like it makes me feel like I'm learning something all the time, if that makes sense. And so like, I think it is really helpful, and it helps me to like retain certain aspects of the the content for the section, but I think more than anything, it helps me to like stay motivated and take bite-sized chunks of the test and study process, So
Yeah.
if even if I have to, I can't sit for, or I have things going on, or I'm busy for whatever reason, I can't study. Like at least I can do a couple of these things, and then I'm at least looking at the material. I'm keeping it fresh. I'm keeping it in the top of mind. So at least I'm thinking about the content throughout the day.
Yeah. Yeah. There is it's not like I thought of this on my own or anything, but I did that when I studied, strictly out of necessity, because my first attempt at FAR, I had 7 hours a day, all day before I started my first job. And I failed that. I got a 74. And then after that, I was like, okay, I have 2 hours in the morning. So what am I going to do to like use that 2 hours? And then I would just take quizzes relentlessly on my phone. And Wiley's app back in the day was just like dead simple, but it was perfect. And now they've changed it to where you have to go through all these options just to start a quiz. And so people just don't end up using it in these 2-minute chunks because it takes 2 minutes to like set up a quiz. So that's why we make ours like extremely simple. There's like only 3 possible things you can even click on, so that 2 taps and you're taking a quiz.
Yeah.
Because it's huge to just chip away at it. Like every time you have a few minutes. And I think a lot of people discount that idea. Like, what am I really accomplishing, studying for 2 minutes at a time? But you keep making those connections. Yeah, just like you said, there's just a huge benefit to that.
Really adds up. And you say it in a couple of the videos, but it's like truly that like you want the quickest way to get from a 74 to a 75 is just plug those things, keep it top of mind, keep thinking about it, and it's going to be effective. So
yeah. And there's all these studies. Apparently there's it's like an actual, I don't know what you would call it, neuroscientists or whatever, people who study modes of learning, they refer to that as retrieval learning. And they talk about, I've linked to it, to an article a few times from different posts or episodes, but they talk about how it's dramatically more effective. And they've done all these studies on it. 2 groups of students that take one long like study session and cover the whole topic, and then take a test on it like a few weeks later. And the other group, I mean, it sounds obvious when you explain it. If you look at something multiple times in small chunks a day, it's just dramatically more effective. Whereas, again, that's one of those, the issues with the traditional study approach is one lesson, which is a huge amount of information, and then the next day you move on to a new mountain of information, and it's essentially like replacing it all in your short-term memory. And then by the time you get to the exam, you're weeks removed from the first half of stuff you covered. So it's just like, it makes sense why it only works for about half of people across the board.
Yeah. I mean, but you said it right there, right? It is so simple, but yet that's how we learn our whole lives is that method. And then you take it into your CPA studying same way, right? I studied the same way throughout all of my education. So of course I just applied that to how I'm studying or trying to study for the CPA, and that didn't work. So it's like, I wish I would have had this approach for like college. That would have been sweet.
Right. Yeah. So what is I guess kind of 2 things, like what are your life gets in the way type things? Like, what do you have to work around outside of work to find time to study? And then just going along with that, like, what does a day of studying look like for you? Like, when do you study? If you use the study tools on your phone throughout the day, like, what does that all look like? What is a typical study day for you?
Yeah. So the first question, what life gets in the way? I think it's pretty standard stuff. I have a significant other, my fiance, she takes time for sure. And so like, that family, fun, friends, like everything gets in the way. In the winter I ski, in the summer I golf. So like that all, I have to figure out a way to still keep my sanity and do these fun things while making sure that I'm hitting my marks for the day. And like I can share this for sure. My solve or my thing for the ski season is I listen to all of it takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to the mountain from my house. And so I listen to the audio recordings all the way there and all the way home. And that's my like, all right, I did it for the day. It might not be
Yeah.
exactly I'm not learning new material, but at least I did something for the day and I feel accomplished that I'm keeping it top of mind. And sometimes that really helps. Golf kind of similarly, like if I'm playing by myself, I will just listen to it while I'm on the course and I don't mind that at all.
Right.
But those are the kind of the get in the way things. And I think that everyone kind of runs into something similar. Maybe like the saving grace that I have is I don't have kids. And so like, I can't imagine having young children running around
Yeah.
while trying to study for these sections. So anyway, yeah, so those are my get in the way. Process though, I'm a morning studier, always have been. So that just translated really well. So I am up by 5:30, studying. Fortunately, I'm working from home these days, so it doesn't take a whole lot for me to get out of bed and get to the desk to start my study routine, coffee in hand. Start by 5:30, done by. Sorry, maybe I should say I immediately start with the next section or subsection or whatever you want to say. So I space my tests so that I can have 1 week per section. So if there's 10 sections of the exam, like FAR, I have 10 weeks to study. It's probably not everybody's cup of tea, but that's how like it helps me break it up in my head of like what needs to get done for that period. And so I will either do one section, one subsection. Oh, sorry. Like the section subsection is so hard to follow, but like
It's Becker, right? I'm
Becker,
kind of familiar
yeah.
with how Becker is laid out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll do the questions. I will either watch the video. If the video is over an hour, typically I save it for the weekend or don't watch it, honestly, or I skip to the parts that I struggled in the questions just because it's too much of the time, and then I wouldn't get to my 30 questions. So if it's shorter, probably 20 minutes or less, 30 minutes or less, I'll watch the video at that time. I will then do my 30 questions, which usually takes me between 15 and 20 minutes. And then I will re-review my notes from the day, or for the section, we'll say. And then that's pretty much it for my morning session. I carve out half hour during the day, like a dedicated half hour to do either one of reading pages of the notes, doing potentially more sections of my study materials just in case, or doing the little mini quizzes. I probably end up doing 5 or 6 mini quizzes throughout the day, and then usually I have. So now I'm at like 2 hours in the morning, probably a total of half hour, 45 minutes throughout the day. And then in the evenings, if I need to catch up or maintain my, where I'm at for the week, then I will have an extra session in the evening. Usually if I'm on track, which usually it's pretty close, I will just do another 30 question section and then call it quits. Usually done by, I'll get off work at 5:36, usually done by 7, I would say, with studying for the evening, and then rinse and repeat, do it again the next day.
Yeah. And it is really nice to, once you have like that daily process that works, and especially like, it's working really well now. And once you've like kind of accomplished it for the day, you just don't have to think about it for the rest of the evening. And, it's just, then you get to have that like mental break instead of always grinding and dreading. I think the worst thing is probably like when you got those 374s, like the worst thing about this is if you're putting in all this time and effort and it's just like not paying off, that's when this gets really, depressing or just really frustrating, obviously.
Yeah, man. I mean, the the CPA can put you in a dark place, is what I would say. And so to anybody listening to this that is in that dark place, like it gets better. Keep grinding and like push through it. So that's kind of I was there. I was like, why am I doing accounting? I don't like, does it really make me excited? Do I really love it that much? I can't even pass these things. And then it starts making you question. But it's not accounting. We're talking about a test, right? You need to regurgitate information. And so like that's tough. That's a tough like cog in your brain that like doesn't click after enough of these beat downs. And so like, yeah. So I would say for sure I'm with you in terms of like the mental drag.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, once you have a process, like there's no easy buttons on this, obviously. It's going to take time, dedicated focus. You have to like keep your head in the game all the time. But once you have a process that's working, it's momentum. And so like, it's almost, I got to the point where I almost looked forward to like my morning study sessions just because I knew it was working. I just knew if I keep doing this day after day, I'm going to pass these exams and be done. Whereas again, it's really hard to sit down and study for hours every day if you just feel like you're spinning your wheels and what you're doing like isn't working. And so it's much easier to do it every day if you have this sense of progress, which, that's why I'm always talking about you have to figure out your study process. It's not, you don't just throw endless time at this. You have to be like strategic, figure out, make sure what you're doing is working.
And I would also say, to that point, is like finding that balance of, I know I have to finish these 7 topic areas for the week in my study schedule to remain on track. But if I'm no longer like cognitively understanding what's going on, or I'm just like fried, do something else. Just change it up. Take some of these quizzes. Like it's not working. Don't spin your wheels. Don't waste your time. And of course, there's a balance there, right? You have to get through the material somehow. So figure it out. But that was one area that I found super helpful. Was the first time I started taking these exams that I would just, I'd force myself to sit there until it was done. And like looking back, like how silly or how foolish was that to like force myself to sit there for hours on end, realizing in the moment that I'm really not understanding what's going on. But if I just watch this, it'll somehow just be there when I need it in a month,
Yeah. Yep. And then I liked what you said about listening to the audio notes when you're skiing. An interview I did yesterday, he was talking about how he'll go mountain biking and he just listens to the audios while he mountain bikes. And like, well, I mean, I get why. And that's awesome that you can still be making progress and do something. It doesn't sound like the funnest thing in the world, like listening to my voice talk about accounting while you're mountain biking, but the point there is you can be making progress with using study tools as you go out and still do some of the things that you like doing. Like you don't have to just completely close off everything, all your hobbies, for 6 months while you get these exams done. Like you can be doing both. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you golf quite a bit? I'm a huge golfer.
Are you a huge golfer? I'm not very good, to be honest with you. I started golfing probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, and I've gotten down to I broke 90 this summer. That was my big accomplishment for the summer, but that's I'm not very good.
No, but like you can go out and play and not lose balls every other hole. Like that's when it gets real fun. Yeah, exactly. I would say I'm about there. My biggest issue though is that I love to hit the long ball, so I always bring out the driver, and then I haven't quite learned course management. So I put myself into trouble a lot. I feel like Bryson out there. I've just admitted to myself I would rather like hit a 330-yard drive than pretty much anything else. So if I lose one once in a while doing that, there's just nothing like hitting the driver. So that's hilarious. That's exactly.
I like to live by the motto, layups are for basketball. So
Yeah, I didn't come out here to lay up. Exactly.
Exactly.
That is funny. So what about your, we talked about your process for taking notes. What about the few days before an exam? If you want to call it a final review, or do you use the little mega cram session thing? Like how do you do the last few days before an exam?
Yep. So I do have the final review for Becker, and that actually is a product. I don't know. I'm not trying to tote other products here, but is a product that I would encourage people to get because
Yeah,
it's
I've heard
definitely
good
helpful.
things. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it just consolidates it, so I can get through that entire book in probably 2 days, 3 days. And so let's say I'm out a week or so from exam day, I will make sure to get through that final review. Anything in that final review that doesn't click immediately, I write it down and I go back to either the section or the notes or the, wherever it is that finally allows me to make it click. And so I would do that. Honestly, I'm kind of a head case the couple days before I get into a very stable state, and I have to keep it. Like, I have rituals of what I do night before. Like, I have a sweatshirt that I wear for every exam, and just and like
That's
I'm not
hilarious.
lying. I played baseball growing up, so I'm quite superstitious. I'm a little stitious, and so yeah. So I have a routine. I have what I eat in the morning before my exams. I have, I have a specific exam location. I mean, there aren't that many prometric places in my area, but I have one that I go to, and I know I'm not going to go somewhere else. I would wait an extra amount of time to go to this one specific location because it's working. So
yeah,
why mess it up?
That's funny. The interview I just did a couple hours ago, and we'll publish that next week or something. But she was saying that once she got her study process figured out, and then she just felt like she was ahead of schedule and wanted good vibes before her first exam, or her first exam once she really felt like she knew what she was doing. So she had a cookout with friends, drank a beer, and she's the whole time she was saying she's really superstitious. So she was now before each of my exams, I get my friends together and have a beer the night before. And she went 4 for 4 after she was doing that. It's funny.
I should have said a more fun ritual. That's what I'm trying to say now.
You could add that in while you wear your sweatshirt.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So you use the, I'm assuming you also go through your Excel spreadsheet where you've collected kind of all your struggle areas.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I definitely leverage that more during the daily process rather than the final review. I do call it my final review spreadsheet, but I don't go, tab by tab. That would take too much time. And it wouldn't be super effective for me. So I do reference it, but I don't go end to end on that in that workbook at the end or in that week leading up.
Yeah. And then how do you study on the weekends? Is it any different than what you do on the weekdays?
Yep, definitely different. I focus a lot of my time on task-based simulations on the weekends. So, well, first, if there's any sections that didn't get done during the week, which is pretty rare, I'm usually pretty diligent. In which case, I take one Saturday or Sunday, get up in the morning, and probably spend 3-4 hours and do the TBSs for the section. Anything that isn't clicking, again, go back and re-review that. But I usually spend a day, or I take one of the days to decompress as a free day for sure.
Mm-hmm. The last thing I kind of ask is, what would be your top 2 or 3 tips to someone who's currently someone who's putting in a bunch of time but really struggling with the process? Even if it's stuff we already covered, what would be your top 2 or 3 tips to people?
Well, number one tip is buy your product and trust the process. Because I'm just kidding. But seriously, there's no reason to be putting in insane hours. You're not retaining the information, and unless the test is in a week and you haven't started studying, in which case you should probably reschedule that test anyway. There's no reason for you to be grinding that hard, studying that hard, if you plan accordingly. And so tips, I would say, trust the process. In terms of breaking it into bite-sized chunks daily. Second tip, make time for yourself. Like it's a tough thing and not many people understand it. And so find a community of folks that, even if it's on Reddit or, people that you don't actually know, or even Superfast, like the chats, like sometimes there's good stuff in there.
Yeah.
But like find a community that can sympathize, if nothing else, with what you're going through, and just be open with them about what you need in terms of support, or, hey, I'm going to go dark for the next month. It's nothing personal type idea. So take time for yourself and keep people that are in your corner around you. Other than that, I would say, like, we covered a lot of what I do, and I think that's been working. So those would be kind of my tips. But
yeah, not two questions. I have one question on that. But I liked what you said earlier about just doing something each day, even if it's just with like study tools or reviewing your own notes, or like you said, you're going to go skiing, but you listen to the audios. I mean, and you end up, that's like 4 hours total. So, I mean, that's highly worthwhile or highly valuable study time you're putting in. And then what I was going to ask was, when you mentioned finding like a community, because a few times people have said they were part of like a very specific like Facebook group, like for like moms that were studying for the CPA exams. Or do you go on Reddit a lot? You mentioned Reddit on the CPA subreddit, or?
I peruse. I wouldn't say I follow it or anything too crazy. I'm fortunate that I have a number of friends that are also Big Four and have gone through something similar. Gotcha. So I'm fortunate to have that community. But I would say, like, I do go on Reddit on occasion, and just to see, especially after like test releases, it's always nice to hear people, hey, I share their story. Like, I struggled with this one part and I got an 87. I got 74 3 times and I got an 87 on FAR. Like, I did it. I made it.
Yep.
Like, and just sharing that like celebration, I guess, like that part's great. Reddit can be tough. These other forums can be tough because sometimes it turns into like more of a sob story type thing. And I like that can be tough, right? If it's constructive and they're looking for, how did you overcome this hurdle? Great. Love it. But as soon as like it's unfair, like, woe is me, then that's kind of where I check out.
So that's partly because partly why I was asking about Reddit, if there was maybe some other subreddit I wasn't aware of. But when I look on like the CPA subreddit, it just seems like people mostly just complaining like about how stupid the exams are and like blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, well, even if all that's true, I mean, this is still like you either pass these or you don't. So anyways, that's kind of that's kind of why I was asking about Reddit specifically, is at least that one subreddit.
And I've seen it also on like some Facebook forums as well. Like, I think that's everywhere. And so just filtering that out, keeping that in mind. I mean, I would never look at like the CPA subreddit like the day before an exam. Like, that would stress me out. So do it at your own pace. But it's a good resource, if nothing else, just to have somebody that's going through something that you're going through. So
well, and that's with this. Did you say you had listened to several of these episodes before, or like during just in the last year or so?
I started listening on occasion, like starting.
You said that's how
January.
You found us, actually, was the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, when we started that, I mean, I didn't really have goals for like the podcast, but that was one unintended thing that we just get constantly, is how motivating it is just to hear someone's complete story arc. Like, they may or may not have struggled in the beginning, and then there's all the study tips about, I passed all 4. This is exactly how I studied. This is what would work. But a lot of the stories, there's this period of like struggle first, and just people hearing that, and there's all these, depending on like who you are, there's just striking similarities, different episodes you identify with, and I don't know. That's one thing we hear constantly about these episodes. That's why we keep doing it, because
keep doing them.
It's just a really good resource. Yeah. Okay. Well, we've kind of gone through everything. So you've passed FAR, and what's the other one?
Audit.
Nice. So you just have which one are you doing next? I know you said this. BEC. I just forgot. BEC. Yeah,
BEC in October, and then I'll do reg in December timeframe ish. So
awesome.
BEC I'm not terribly concerned about. I'm like internal controls is kind of what I've done for a lot of my career. IT stuff, like economic, all of the material. Like if I was gonna say I'm comfortable with any of the material, it'd be BEC. So
yeah,
I'm excited to and I also think it's the most interesting material to learn. I think there's a lot of people that would disagree with that statement, but that, and then reg, and reg is reg. It'll be a lot of that. Will be a lot more flashcards and a lot more just memorization stuff. But
yeah, but if you got an 87 on FAR, you just do that. Like you have your process down, and so it's just execution at this point and doing it every day, and you'll be done. So, well,
yes,
I'm glad our stuff could help, and that you found our podcast. I guess that's another benefit of the podcast. A lot of people have found us that way. So I appreciate you doing the call. It was awesome to meet you, and congrats on being done with 2 and well on your way.
Hey, thank you. And I would say to you, thanks for doing these, man. The product itself is awesome, and it's helping more people than I think you even know. So just thank you.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, I love getting on here and hearing these full, talking with our actual customers and hearing people's full stories. It's been really cool too. So I appreciate you saying that. So that was the interview. I'm sure you found that very helpful, motivating, inspiring, all the above. If you did find it helpful, again, please take a second to share this episode with someone you know who is also working on their exams. And if you haven't yet, sign up for one of our free study trainings. So thank you for watching or listening, and we will see you on the next episode.